Have you heard about this Benefactor guy? This dude is talking about free energy, but here's the twist. He says it's not free energy. He's calling it energy recycling, which first off is kind of genius, right? Because when you say free energy, people immediately throw you in the crazy bin. But energy recycling, that sounds like some next level Tesla shit.
Yeah, man, it's all about the branding. But what is it that he's actually doing?
All right, check this out. He posted this. Free energy isn't actually free. This is a misnomer. It's actually a mutual exchange from the vacuum, a field of energy from which everything arises, the same energy that powers an atom. Like what? Bro, that's some deep shit. But then he breaks it down. He says you can tap into this energy without breaking any known laws of physics by using something called back EMF capture.
Whoa, back EMF capture? Sounds like some serious sci-fi tech.
Dude, listen to this. He explains that when a coil collapses using a pulsed signal, the energy that would normally just get wasted, like just dissipate as heat, can actually be recycled. He says nature gives you back energy to stabilize the system, which makes sense if you think about how nature works. Like everything in nature is always trying to find balance, right?
So equilibrium, is that like how water always levels out or something? I'm trying to remember what Ms. Murphy said to me in 6th grade science all those years ago. What was that? Oh yeah, Elon, stop eating that glue and pay attention. Man, if only I had listened, I'd probably be the one inventing energy recycling instead of just talking about it.
Exactly. So he's saying that by intentionally destabilizing the system, collapsing the field, you actually get energy back as a kind of natural response. And here's where it gets wild. He compares it to pushing a swing. If you push at the right moment, you don't need to use a lot of energy and the swing gains momentum. But instead of a swing, he's using resonance to harness that extra energy without it becoming destructive. He says most traditional systems are like a surfer fighting against the current, while his method is like riding the wave to shore.
Dude, that's crazy. So he's basically saying the energy is already there. I just suck at using it efficiently?
That's what it sounds like. He's basically saying the way we harness energy now is like trying to swim against the tide. And if we used resonance instead, we'd be tapping into energy that's already there, just waiting to be used. I don't know, man. Either this guy is onto something or he's the most poetic bullshitter of all time.
Well, if he's legit, why isn't he all over the news? I haven't heard anything from him on X, formerly Twitter. He hasn't said anything bad about me on X. So, you know, I didn't ban him or anything. Look, I'm not the monster my therapist says I am. I mean, sure, I've spent millions of dollars training to beat a kangaroo in a fist fight, but that doesn't mean I'm dangerous. It just means I get shit done.
That's the real question, man. But here's the craziest part. I looked into him, and he's not selling anything. He open sources all of it. That's the real question, man. Either the system doesn't want to hear it, or we're about to find out if this guy disappears in the middle of the night.
Dude, that's crazy. He's absolutely crazy. That means if he's telling the truth, anybody could build this in their garage. You know what I say? Go fuck yourself, Benefactor.
Nope, no patents, no paywalls, just straight up, here, take it, see for yourself. Like, what kind of madman does that? Usually people either try to cash in or they get shut down before they can say a word. But this guy, he's out there on live streams showing people exactly how to replicate it.
I mean, if you want to try to take on my Tesla tech, how dare you put out better technology that is cheaper and safer? Go fuck yourself.
That's the thing, man. If it's real and people start building it, that's a game changer. We're talking about completely shifting how we think about energy. But also, if it's real, you got to wonder how long before somebody tries to stop him.
Or maybe we can think of it like how long before his Tesla mysteriously malfunctions.
Exactly. You ever notice how every time someone gets too close to this kind of stuff, they either disappear, get discredited, or somehow have a tragic accident? But this guy's going full transparency mode. He's putting it all out there where everyone can see it. Maybe that's his strategy. If enough people know, it can't just get buried.
Holy shit, this might be one of those moments, you know, like we look back and say that was the start of something huge.
Can't you hear his voice? work is divine. I've been working on energy for a brand new day. But even in the crowd, I'm still a castaway. Alienated from the A's of added mentor in disguise. Ideas ahead of time, dismissed with narrow eyes. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world you can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his boy. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice? Talking love zero point, the points lost on them. Capital structures crumbling from the same old Sam. They laugh like I'm crazy, but I see it all so clear. Exploited labor, unheard, injustice burning ears. Fighting for a change in this wasteland of noise. But they call me foolish, wanting shed boys. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world we can't deploy. Changing the system, but treated like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his boy. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice?
All right. Welcome, and welcome back to the Benefactor's Guide to Free Energy Devices. I'm your host, the Benefactor, and today we're going to do my Part 2 lecture on cold electricity. Now, we've all been taught the basics of electricity. Electrons flow through copper wires, circuits, light bulbs, batteries, pushing and pulling charge, you know, volts, amps, resistance, conductors, insulators. It all seems to make so much sense, until you dig a little deeper. What if I were to tell you that that's just one side of the story? There's another form of electric energy, long overlooked, misunderstood, or outright suppressed. And it's been called many things: cold electricity, negative energy, radiant energy by Nikola Tesla, or by Tom Bearden, convergent energy. Let's break it down side by side. In the standard electrical model, electricity works like this. Atoms have tiny particles. The electrons are the ones that move. Electricity happens when those electrons get pushed through a metal wire. That's called a conductor. Materials like copper and silver are great for this because electrons can move freely and easily within them. A battery pushes electrons in one direction. That's what we call voltage, the potential difference between the positive and negative terminal. As the electrons flow, they create a current. This type of electricity causes heat when it moves through the wires, or powers things like light bulbs. If the circuit is broken, no flow, no power. So this is the kind of electricity we're all used to. It's positive, it spreads outward from a power source, and it flows through wires and metals. But it's not the only type of energy out there. Now we're going to take a quick look at how coils work before I move on to section 2.
Designing many machines. When you connect the coil, this is a simple coil, and it has a very important role in designing many machines. When you connect the coil with a supply, it starts converting electric energy into magnetic field. Now let's take a different case. When a magnet is suddenly put near to the coil, an EMF rises at the ends of the coil. But this EMF will disappear as our magnet stops moving. If we pull magnet in opposite direction, EMF will also start producing in opposite direction. For producing EMF continuously, we have to keep our magnet moving. It is called electromagnetic induction. This phenomenon is used in countless applications. Like the video, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
Alright, so according to researchers like Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden, Nikola Tesla, and other iconic figures, there's another form of electricity that we don't talk about. It doesn't behave like the one we just talked about earlier in this section, in the part 1 section. It moves differently, it feels differently, and it might even come from a different place altogether, the vacuum. So positive energy is divergent from the conductor. What this means is it always wants to escape outward as heat and sound, while the conductor acts as a waveguide, keeping it on that wire. Negative electricity doesn't act like this. It doesn't spread outward. It pulls inward. Think of it like water being pulled down a drain rather than sprayed out of a hose. We call it convergent energy. So it doesn't move by pushing electrons through a wire like regular positive electricity either. Instead, it seems to flow as a kind of invisible pressure around the wire. And it works better in materials that don't carry electrons easily, like capacitors, air gaps, dielectric materials, or other special coils, other than the rodent coil that I'm using here. Some inventors found that when this energy flows, things don't get hot. They actually stay cool, or even get cold. It doesn't always light up a normal bulb, but it can charge batteries incredibly well and make strange things happen in motors and coils. We are using the Bearden motor behind me to charge a battery with another battery, something Mythbusters said was impossible, but we're doing it using the principles of negative electricity. So negative energy doesn't like to flow through normal metal wires. So why is this? Well, because those wires are made to carry the kind of electricity we already know, positive electricity, moving electrons. But negative energy doesn't move like that. It doesn't need to push particles through a pipe, so to speak. Instead, it behaves more like a field or kind of pressure wave of potential energy. And regular wires tend to either block, absorb, or turn it into heat. That's why people working with this type of energy use things like coils, capacitors, air gaps, and even vacuum spaces like vacuum tubes, because that's where this energy really shines. Now we're going to talk about a side-by-side comparison to summarize these two different forms of energy. The positive electricity flows outward from the source, example from a battery. While a negative electricity pulls inward, like a vacuum. Positive electricity likes metal wires and conductors, while negative electricity likes capacitors, coils, and space between parts. Positive energy produces heat, it makes things hot, while negative energy stays cool or even gets colder than the ambient temperature. Positive energy is best at powering light bulbs, heaters, and appliances, while negative electricity is best at charging batteries, powering motors, wireless energy transfer, and utilizing it for even stranger effects. Positive energy moves by pushing electrons through a wire, while negative electricity pulls energy across space in the form of a pressure wave. Positive energy is easy to detect and measure, while negative electricity is hard to measure and often invisible or hard to observe directly. Now, some of the iconic figures associated with positive energy is Edison and Faraday. However, the iconic figures associated with negative electricity include famous Nikola Tesla, Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden, T. Henry Moray, Floyd Sweet, and more. So this next section is something that I've been researching for a while, quietly in the background of all my other research with this coil. And my question is this: why does a Joule thief coil hum? Why does the light bulb hum sometimes and not the coil? What does this mean for our efficiency? I've come to the conclusion that if your light or coil makes a quiet, low volume but high-pitched hum, that's usually a good sign. It means your system is mostly working well and only losing a little bit of energy in the form of sound. Most people get this wrong though. They assume the louder your coil sings with the Joule thief, the more energy you have, but this is wrong. That is, in reality, what is actually happening is you are producing a resonance cascade, that is a buildup of energy with nowhere to go. This energy is then forced out via physical vibration and is a signifier of wasted potential. In other words, the louder your coil or light source is humming under one of these setups, the more energy you're actually wasting. When we learn to properly recycle that energy, the system goes quiet. If you have a high-pitched, high-volume hum coming from your Joule Thief circuit, then you actually have not got it working very efficiently. The quieter you can get your coil to sound, the better it's working, using energy the smart way and not wasting it. So when you tune your setup, listen for the hum. Less noise means more energy is doing its job. So this next section is regarding the Lightning Thief setup that I have been utilizing with the Rodent coil and the Joule Thief, the modified Joule Thief circuit. And let's get real for a minute. Let's talk about this. It's a little experimental setup that might just be walking the line between both forms of energy, positive and negative. And this is very, very interesting. And this is my solution for how to utilize a Joule Thief most effectively with the Rodent coil. So now we are going to talk about how to avoid wasting energy with the Joule Thief circuit using a Rodent coil or a vortex coil. This is my method, and everything you need to replicate is in my prototype do-it-yourself guide linked in the video description, free for everybody, so you can go check that out right now. The device is called the Lightning Thief, and it is my working solution for maximizing efficiency in a Joule Thief with a Rodent coil setup. This device uses something I've been calling synthetic AC, because it's not the kind that comes out of your grandpa's wall socket, but an artificial sine wave made by pulsing energy in one direction, letting the system echo it back through clever design and timing, while replicating a synthetic alternating current between the forward and back electromotive force. Input energy is pulsed into a coil and in a timing circuit, the Joule Thief. The coil geometry eliminates resistance at an atomic level, making it easier to achieve and maintain resonance with minimal losses. Utilizing two channels for the coil properly allows us to create two separate electromagnetic coil fields. When timed properly, these two coils produce two counter-rotating fields of energy that are condensed and compressed on top of each other in such a way that it produces a 0 point on the coil's equatorial plane. That is the middle plane between the two coils, the top one and the bottom one. So think of it like this. You've got water in a bucket. You slosh the water forward. A nice big wave comes. Now in a normal setup for AC, you'd have to slosh it back using your own mechanical force to complete the cycle. Remember, forward and back, forward and back. That's your standard alternating current, or AC. It's using the same energy to go back and forth. You're essentially paying to push and pull. You're paying both ways. But the Lightning Thief does something else. You slosh one way, and the bucket sloshes itself back. You only pay for the push. And the collapse, that's the return wave. That back EMF comes back with just a little bit extra energy. It's not using the forward energy to complete the alternating current cycle. It's now using the backward electromotive force, the back energy. Think of it like this. You pulse the energy one way into a coil that collapses and gives you a bunch of free energy back in the form of back EMF. It usually needs to be grounded out of the system or eliminated, but this is very wasteful. What we are doing with the Lightning Thief is timing this extra pulse of backward energy so it interacts just right with the forward energy. The two halves of this effect produce a whole synthetic alternating current between them, effectively utilizing this otherwise wasted back EMF. I call it back EMF capture, a method of energy recycling using this synthetic AC. Tom Bearden will kind of put it like this. If the operator must furnace the energy to reestablish the source charge, the system is closed and self-limited. But if the dipole is preserved, the vacuum can furnish unlimited energy flow freely. So how it actually works? Well, we broke it down. Pulse one way, the Joule Thief circuit times the collapse of the coil, and you get the back EMF pulse just right the other way. These two pulses, when timed correctly, produce the alternating current. You get a return reaction from the coil, back EMF, which is essentially free energy from the vacuum. Pulsing the signal on creates the electromagnetic field. When the signal is in its off state, the field collapses and injects the system with a little bit of free energy from the vacuum, the back EMF, without a second push from the input power source. That's the most important part. You're not using the power source, the battery, to do this. Most AC systems will be paying for both the push and the pull, but we're only paying for the push here. And what you get on the scope is actually even more remarkable, something that supports my synthetic AC hypothesis even more. And I'll show you in a video in a minute. But what we'll be looking at is on the micro scale, zoomed all the way in, you get this crazy looking, I don't know what to call it. It's like a 0-point like convergence with tiny symmetrical energy streams, kind of S-shaped, shooting outward from both ends. And then you zoom out a little bit on the normal scale that you would normally read the signal at, and you get all these nested, chaotic nested harmonics. It's really one signal bouncing off of itself in resonance, producing a little bit extra energy. And then when you zoom out all the way, you get this beautiful sine wave out of all that chaos, and it's really insane. It's really crazy to see, and I'm going to show you that right now, as soon as I can get to it. All right, and this is what we get when we zoom all the way out. We get all this chaos turns into a smooth sine wave. It's pretty cool, but it supports my observations. You know, we were getting a strong DC current and a strong AC current, and we couldn't figure out why until I formed this hypothesis. It must be the synergy between the forward and back EMF producing this synthetic AC wave. And if you plug it in on the output, you actually see, because it's, you know, purple colored, the output, you see it's a little bit bigger than the input wave, which is indicative of extra energy being utilized, right? So that's exactly what we want to see in a free energy system, even though it's just a little bit. And here's the most important feature, though. When you're looking for synthetic AC when trying to replicate these experiments, okay, let me get this off the screen. So no matter where you probe the system, the input, the output across the coil, you get the same three characteristics that we just went over. And unless you're getting these same three characteristics in all points of your system, you're not in full resonance. And that was another theory. I had a theory that, you know, in order to get full efficiency out of these systems, you not only have to tune the coil with the capacitor and the circuit, but you also have to choose your light source properly as well, because that can affect the frequency. And you want to maintain a harmonic, or the resonance or a harmonic of that resonance. And as soon as you plug in the wrong light source and your frequency goes outside of that harmonic range, you're losing a lot of energy. So when you tune an LC system like this, you want to have all the components in harmony, from the coil to the capacitor, but even the light bulb itself need to be compatible. Remember, light bulbs act as capacitors, and capacitors change frequency of a signal. That means you must properly match your coil to the right capacitor and light bulb to create a harmonic of the coil's resonant frequency. Once done correctly, all your components of the system will produce a signal with these three defining features. So the dinner analogy is fun, and we can put it this way. Most AC devices are like going to a fancy restaurant and paying for the full meal, tip and all. That's what you and that's what you and your normal systems would be doing, right? But with the lightning thief, you pay for half the meal, and then the waiter comes up and covers the rest plus the tip. That's exactly what we're seeing. Why? Because it's how you ordered. You didn't scream at the system. You asked nicely, you shaped your request, and you let the universe echo back with interest. So wrapping up, what have we learned here? Well, we learned that positive electricity pushes electrons through a wire and creates heat. But there is a yang to that yin. Negative electricity pulls energy inward, works in capacitors best and air gaps, and stays cool. The lightning thief, a device that utilizes synthetic AC, shows what happens when you stop thinking in terms of pushing current and start thinking about guiding field behavior. And the waveform proves it. When shape and timing are aligned, the system doesn't just transmit energy, it self-organizes and amplifies energy as evident in these systems. So, going forward, maybe the real secret isn't forcing power. Maybe it's learning to play nice with nature. I want to thank you all so much for joining me here on Beneficence TV. This has been the Benefactor's Guide to Free Energy Devices, or as I like to call it, energy recycling. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more revolutionary content. Only available here on Beneficence TV.
Invasive lab alone with my mind. Stable theories, they all refuse to find. I've been working on energy for a brand new day, but even in the crowd, I've still been cast away. Alienated from the aids of that inventor in disguise. Ideas ahead of time, dismissed in their eyes. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world you can't deploy. Changing the system, I treat it like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his point. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice? Talking about 0 point, the points lost on them. Capital structures crumbling from the same old stem. They laugh like I'm crazy, but I see it all so clear. Exploited labor, unheard, injustice burning ears. Fighting for a change in this wasteland of noise. But they call me foolish, wise, ancient boys. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world you can't deploy. Changing the system, I treat it like a toy. Ideas misunderstood, but brilliance is his point. Benefactor boy, can't you hear his voice? Benefactor boy, keep fighting the fights, chasing revolutions in the darkest nights. A dreamer with vision beneath the laughter and noise. A future so bright, waiting for the right choice. Benefactor boy, dreaming about the world he can't deploy. Changing the
In the depths of hidden files, trapped inside the secret circuits, unraveling through the miles, oh, truth was masked by golden curtains. to open our eyes. We stand tall, defying all their lies. Here and now, we're shattering the silence. Feel the power. Revelations on the rise. Forbidden knowledge we dare to see. Unveiling secrets, setting minds free. In this epic, we play our part with fearless hearts. Here and now, we're shattering the silence. Feel the power. Revelations on